Thank you guys all for taking time out of your day to come join this. I've been super excited to start the collaboration page, and I tried to get ahead of the game, in this time that we're experiencing, from a university shutdown to what can we do from home for our partners. And so there's a lot of interwoven things in this tech integration roundtable. For starters, I just want to explain that I'm not only a university faculty member, but I'm also a student. And so I'm currently taking a course called Immersive Learning Technologies at IU Bloomington. And our final project has a lot of differentiated options. One of them is a video with an analysis of the video. So what I thought would be very relevant would be to get teachers and administrators together at different levels in different areas and be able to just ask some questions about this crazy fast immersion into distance learning, which is great for me because the class I'm taking is about online engagement, immersive technologies, and distance learning. So apologies for using this time for a two-edged sword, but I so thank you, and I'm super excited to hear what's going on. So if you would just introduce yourself. I'm going to start with Katie, and just tell us where you teach, what you do in that school system. I know we have Chad with us from a long way away, so good to have you. I was hoping to have a few more states involved just to see the differences that are going on around the country. So I'll start with Katie.
Sure. I'm Katie Lash. I am a middle school principal. I'm in Randolph Central School Corporation. And my time in the classroom was spent with students in special education. So this e-learning experience has me thinking about kind of that perspective, of course, leading the entire building, but my heart is there, helping struggling students. So,
Mallory?
Yeah, I'm Mallory Dill, and I am a 6th grade math teacher at Northeastern Middle School. I've also taught science and language arts. So this has been interesting because we're on spring break, so they haven't really had to do anything quite yet.
Tori?
I'm Tori Johnson, and I am a 4th grade teacher at Westview. This is actually my first full year of teaching, so all the craziness has come. We're actually on spring break this week, so it hasn't really affected us yet, but they're also using the calamity days that the governor of Indiana has given us. So we'll know in about 2 weeks what exactly is going to take place for us.
All right, and it's good to have you, Tori, as a now former student and now a grad student with us. So it's going to be great to hear perspectives. Chad, can you hear us?
Yes, sir. Sorry, I was keeping myself on mute because of the dog situation. I'm
Tell
a
us where
special
you teach.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a special education teacher in Anderson, South Carolina, which is like right around Clemson, Greenville area. So the western part of the state. We are currently wrapping up our second week off, or I guess starting our second week off, issued by the governor, and then the governor announced today that we'll be done through April. And our spring break's like the second week of April. So it's been pretty interesting. We don't have calamity days down here. So we had piloted an e-learning initiative for just in case for inclement weather, and then now it's being completely shoved into our instruction solely. So it's been pretty interesting. Our staff is this is really long-winded, I'm sorry. Our staff's a little bit, not as many new teachers as there are experienced teachers, and so the technology difference is pretty fun to navigate within the staff.
Okay. Well, this is great. Like I said, I was happy to have different people. I had a couple other administrators in different states I was trying to rope in. So just congratulations, Chad, since Chad just recently got married in the midst of all of this.
Thanks, man.
Congratulations. We are going to go through a few different things in this roundtable. I have some questions that have been prompted, and then I just want to facilitate questions, taking you through some of the goals that I hope to accomplish today. We're going to analyze the process of moving instruction to online learning, compare and contrast the styles in which you or your district virtually instruct students, evaluate your current successes and shortcomings with online instruction, and what does this do for the future of who we are as educators. And so that's kind of the drive and direction of today's roundtable, especially since this was just such a frog in the boiling water type situation that schools all over the country have been thrown into. So I'm going to start with the first question, and it's for preparedness. And so when you first heard of the possibility of this, what steps did your district take to prepare for online learning? It's going to be great to get two different states here and also an admin perspective versus teachers at different level perspective. So I'm going to pitch to Katie to start this.
All right, yeah. So we had been monitoring. We had a plan in place a couple of weeks before we shut down. Just, you know, the original plan said, if we see a case in Randolph County, this is what would happen. And so the preparedness, I think we were watching. We were ready for the possibility. But I actually had the flu 2 weeks ago. And so I was at home, like I was required to be at home. And so that day I was spending the day watching just universities and churches and all these organizations just go one by one. And so I'm messaging with our superintendent saying, you know, are we going to be a part of this? And he goes, oh, it's not in our area yet. And so then in the 3 days, over the course of the 3 days, it turned from like, this is probably something that we should pay attention to we're not coming back on Monday that quickly. And so we, like I said, we had the plan in place for mostly if it occurred in our county, but then of course we ended up shutting down. There's still not a case in Randolph County, knock on wood. But we ended up, you know, following the directives from the CDC, our health department, et cetera. So it went fast. It went from a hypothetical plan to shut down in about 3 days.
Just down the road, I'm going to go geographically to Mallory at Northeastern. Similar ideas, differences?
Yeah, it was pretty much the same idea. We heard that we could possibly be closing, and they said, you know, prepare like 3 days from when you got back for spring break so that kids could have paper. And then we were going to go 4 days last week, and then we would have our spring break on Friday. And then literally we eat lunch at 10:30. We get an email at 10:30 on Friday that said, you're not coming back to school next week. So we had prepared, like we had practice I learned that needed to be done before any of that happened. So I was doing that with the kids that day and while trying to get them information. So it became very crazy, very fast because our admin didn't even know at that point that we were actually closing for the next week. It came directly from the superintendent. So it went very fast and it was very chaotic. And yeah, so we tried to prepare them the best we could with the schedule we were planning to do after spring break. But now that we're close till May 1st, I'm not really sure what that's going to look like.
Tori, Richmond Community Schools?
Yeah, so ours was a lot like Mallory's. We had a family planning night the night before on Thursday night, and our principal still said like that night, we're still coming next week. Everybody needs to just stay calm. I go to lunch at 11 o'clock, so 11 o'clock on Friday, that was still the plan. We were all coming back the next week. So they came and told the teachers at around 12:30, they came around and told us that we weren't coming back the next week. And they wanted all of us to send packets home with our kids for them to have something to do the next week because it wasn't considered our spring break. So it was really chaotic because we had paras like covering our rooms so we could go make copies, or they would go make copies for us. It was definitely chaotic and it happened super, super quick. And we really didn't know what was going on or what to do because as soon as we would get some type of information, more information would roll through. And when you have your classroom, you can't really check your emails and stuff. And so we kind of relied on the paras to give us all of our information because our principal didn't even really know what was going on at the time.
Chad, a couple things in this question. One, any differences in South Carolina? Two, as a teacher of reference in this case, are there similarities and differences with how this preparedness has taken place?
Yeah, absolutely. So South Carolina was a lot different. I love South Carolina personally. I grew up in Columbus, and then I graduated from Bowling Green and then moved down here as part of Teacher America and been down here ever since. But some of the stereotypes are really true as far as like, if it happens on the West Coast and then it moves to the East Coast, in about 15 years, South Carolina will try it out. And like, no matter what it is, like anything at all. And so originally we were told, be prepared for 4 days off because apparently that's all we thought we needed. From like a state level, even not just a school district. And then from there, they canceled the field trips. That like next week, there are quite a few field trips just by happenstance. And then after that, we were told 2 weeks through an email sent from, I think, our superintendent at that point. But it was very quick, no real heads up, no real planning. They said that the instructional coaches were, I'm trying to remember the exact days, but it was like, maybe a Thursday, they told us we were going to be done the following week. The instructional coaches, and our technology person were meeting to develop a template to push out. And that's kind of what we were left with. A lot of that was in place already for like a short term, but then now that's transitioning long term, it's a lot of catch up.
Okay. That's a lot of processes, a lot of things centering around chaos in this part of our world right now. As we shift to the next set of questions, I want to go from preparedness to collaboration. And you guys can jump in. There's no set order here on this. What sort of department or grade level collaboration occurred to prepare for online learning? And how are you continuing to collaborate with your peers? Or are you? That's the question.
I can start again. We did ask teachers to come back last Monday. So the news was out on Friday that the building would be shut down for students, like we wouldn't have formal classes, but we had teachers come back on Monday. We elected to take our waiver days all last week. So we did not use any e-learning. So it gave teachers the entire week to do their best lessons. But so on Monday, we did spend some time going over our expectations, what this looks like. We actually asked every teacher in the entire secondary campus, so middle school and high school, we have a shared Google Drive. We asked everybody to put their lessons they just had to give us a Google document of like where a student could access their online lessons and what's expected of the students for their class. And then we also asked them to put a paper and pencil version of work into that folder. So the collaboration part is everybody could see what everybody was uploading. And the other benefit of that, we predict moving forward when we come back on the 30th, is that no matter who's working in our front desk, we have a rotation so that our secretaries are not expected to be the only person. Well, there's only one other person other than the principal in the building on e-learning days. And so we are going to ask whoever that is to be able to access those to answer questions, and then also to print for families if they need hard copies of instruction. So that again all happened very quickly, but I think teachers are doing a really great job of looking at what other people are assigning, trying to align with one another just with that very shared space. And then in general, I just think that the middle school is really effective at talking to one another. They just do that pretty naturally. So that plays to our benefit.
Are you all like one-to-one with technology to students, Miss Katie?
Yeah, we are.
Everybody,
we have
I guess.
Chromebooks. Yeah, everybody. Students have Chromebooks.
Okay, that's what we utilize as well.
The concern is just mostly about students being able to access internet, having connection. There's lots of companies that are offering free internet to families, but that requires that they pursue those opportunities really promptly. And so that's our concern.
Yes, ma'am. I can hop in next, I guess, since I interjected already. Sorry. Ours have been a little bit differently. So this morning we started off with like a school-wide collaboration that was optional just to kind of get up-to-date information from the principal. But we have like scheduled office hours that we have to be available for. So it was a little bit before that. She followed it up with like an email. And then right after that, we had one from the director of special ed in our school psychs to kind of touch base on what we're doing there. They elected to suspend IEP meetings and stuff temporarily, which is kind of interesting. I have an uncle who works in Southern Ohio who's involved in the special education department there, and he said that that's not what they were doing. So I thought that was kind of interesting to see the differences. So we had that, and that was those are both Google Hangouts. And then I just ended one with my team, my fourth grade team that I work with this year, to set one up for tomorrow. So it's been a lot of collaborating to collaborate at this point now that we just got all the new influx of information for us.
Sure. I want to jump in really quickly. In Indiana, they are requiring us to meet all dates, including evaluations and annual case reviews. And so, but the good news is waiver days don't count against us, just e-learning days. So we're extending our amount of time, but we're going to have to do case conferences digitally.
Yeah, luckily for the majority of my students, comparable services won't be too big of an issue. But for the meeting timelines, we're kind of going to run into that here really quick, I think. But I don't get paid to make that decision yet, thank goodness.
Anybody else collaborating on content or curriculum or grade level similarities? Tori, on a fourth grade team, do you meet or have any kind of collaboration with your fellow fourth grade teachers? Mallory, same thing, sixth grade teachers?
So with me, there's only myself and one other fourth grade teacher. So we already have a really good, we collaborate really well together. The frustration for us right now is we don't really know where Richmond's going to go next because we are not sure if they're going to do e-learning or if they're going to make us do packets for the kids. E-learning is something that we utilize already for snow days and anything like that. But the problem is most of our kids don't have access to computers at home, and we're one-to-one in the classroom, but that's just fourth grade. The rest of the grades in the elementary building are not one-to-one with technology.
You have carts in your classroom?
We have Chromebook carts, yeah.
That's it, okay.
So we are not one-to-one with technology as a district-wide in the elementary buildings. So we have collaborated and we've went ahead and made things on Canvas because that's what our system we use is. So we've collaborated. She's done most of the math and science. I've done most of the reading and writing. But we don't know if we're going to be able to utilize it because we're not really sure what the next steps are.
Northeastern, any kind of collaboration in the sixth grade team?
Yeah, so before this year, we actually had a team time that we would talk about different things kind of like this and collaborate, but our team's pretty close. We've been together a while. So what our principal did was she reached out to each of the grade level chairs, and I happened to be that for sixth grade, and she wanted me to talk with each of my teachers on the team to see what they were doing so that we could create packets for those who had things who needed them at home. And then when she comes in next week, because we're on spring break this week, when she comes in next week, she could give those families a packet of what we're doing online. So that was nice. It has changed just a tad bit because I talked with her this morning, and actually she comes in with our grade level Zoom meeting with sixth grade students, and she was saying that what our original plan was going to be was once we come back next week, Monday, the kids would just have their first period class, Tuesday, second period class, Wednesday, third period class. And then when they got to day 8, they would do 1, 3, 5, and 7. And then on day 9, they do 2, 4, 6. And then the last day they would do all classes. But with us closing until May 1st, she said that's going to probably change. And we're thinking more along the lines of they would have Monday and Fridays off, and then they would have classes Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And they were thinking something maybe because we only used 4 of the waiver days. So they were thinking maybe we do 2 weeks on and then a week off, and then 2 weeks on and then a week off. But we're kind of running it a lot like the normal e-learning day, honestly, that we would use for a snow day. We're doing about the same type of ideas. We're just making sure we have papers either sent to her or that I had already provided to her that Friday. So I try to keep in touch with my team on, our like group chat and things like that to see what they're doing. And at this point, I think we're all kind of we're not sure what to do. So we've kind of just stopped since we still have this week for spring break. They said we should know by Friday exactly what's going to be the calendar. There will be a calendar presented to the kids and everything to let them know when classes are due and when they're due.
Okay, so I have a question before we move on here, and that is, I know Richmond Community Schools uses Canvas as their learning management system. What are you guys using as that foundation for student integration in online learning?
We use Canvas as well.
Okay. I couldn't remember. I thought so.
Yeah.
Katie?
We used to use Canvas. I loved Canvas, but we now use Unified Classroom, which is what is built into PowerSchool.
Okay.
Or teachers that were very immersed in Google Classroom can still choose to do that. There are features that you can tie Google Classroom into your Unified Classroom, but we're about split right now just because we just lost Canvas last year. So we're just trying to kind of appeal to what people are most proficient at using.
So you're
Canvas makes me think of my
balancing
master's.
multiple platforms. Chad, what about you guys?
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, Tommy. We're using Google Classroom explicitly.
Okay. This is going to be such an interesting data set on the backside of what learning management systems integrate the most effectively, what districts are showing the most productivity. Being a Canvas university, it's so nice to be able to work with our county partners who utilize Canvas as a solid learning management system, and then districts around the country who utilize Google so well. We'll see who rises, the cream that rises to the top on the backside of this. So that's my question. I'm going to move on for sake of all of your time, which we just did this one. So we looked at what learning management systems. Integration with Canvas for my 2 teachers in Wayne County here. What other kind of tools are you using? Are you using Google Suite in integration within Canvas? Are you sending out? Are you using Zoom that's integrated, or are you using Google Meet or Google Hang? Some of these.
Yeah, so I've been doing, just since we haven't done academics yet, I've been doing a daily Zoom with the 6th graders. We just do a check-in each day to see how they're doing and different things like that. So that's the first I've used something in those regards. So if I do teach a lesson, which I have all but like one standard taught. So a lot of it was going to be review work anyway, just practicing the skills. So if I do teach something, it would be more along the lines on Zoom. But we do use Google. They have all the Google apps on their iPads and everything like that already that they're familiar with. So the transition to it going home isn't really new to the kids because they use it daily anyway.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm getting ready to shift everything as well, so I'm right in the same boat. Luckily, I house all of my content on Canvas, so all of my weeks are into modules with module objectives, and all the lessons flow that way. The only difference now is trying to make my STEM inquiry class, which is completely lab-based, and my bio course, which is 50% lab-based, into an online simulation. And so I'm kind of excited because my inquiry class is doing the CDC outbreak simulation scenarios next week for their first lesson back. So I'm trying to figure out how to use Zoom. Within Zoom, you can create groups for student collaboration. So I'm teaching myself how to do that on the fly. So I'm right in the same boat as you guys, trying to scramble to see what is the best collaborative models that we can put forward. Okay, next question. And I'm going to start with the teachers and work my way back to Katie and see what she thinks about this. I just want, as you're planning, and some of you are on spring break, walk us through how you are planning to deliver your lesson and assess it virtually. Now, before you answer this question, I want to take just a moment to show you where this came from. So did any of you do the survey that I sent out?
Mm-hmm.
I had quite a few responses to the survey, which is why I was anticipating about twice as many as there are here. But that's okay. We're here. When looking at the quick survey, about over 60% of those that took the survey, which was, I think, around 16 or 17 people, teachers and admins, said that they were somewhat prepared. They felt okay for this shift. Here's one that is really interesting. Look at this rainbow that came through with professional development that is geared toward blended or online learning. And it was all across the board. Well, almost 1/4 of those that took the survey said we've never done this before. And a small percentage say we do this every month or at least every quarter. So this was a really wide range. I just wanted you guys to see this data as we're moving forward. Here's a great one for you so far, and I hope that this continues to shift more to that similar to normal quality eventually. It's not going to happen now, but eventually. And that is 50% of those that were surveyed said that the quality of work their students are submitting to them is significantly less than what they usually get in a face-to-face setting. So I thought that was interesting data. And then we'll get to these tools here in a minute, another rainbow on what you thought was the most important for collaboration. And this is, I'll come back to Katie now because Katie's looking at multiple learning management systems being utilized by teachers, differentiating for their comfort and their choice of delivery. But the majority, the highest majority of teachers and admins said that virtual engagement strategies were the biggest area needed for professional development moving forward. So I thought this was neat. Collaboration tools were low, but you look at assessment tools, learning management, understanding, and virtual engagement being the highest. So, and then the last one was how well would you rate your district's ability to shift you? And the good thing is the majority of you said thank you to your district, that they did a really, really good job of preparing you for this shift. So I just wanted to take you through that data before we come back to how you deliver a virtual lesson. And I think some of this is based on that data. What kind of engagement tools can I continue to evolve through this? Which is why I loved putting the Facebook page together where people can drop things in there that work or don't work. And some of you will be coming back to those risks that are going to be taken and how does that work? And what are those differences between levels in a K-3 classroom where there's not one-to-one technology? What are you utilizing to make sure that that's continuing versus 4-6 versus 7-8 versus 9-12? So that was a little bit of my thought process here in the middle. I wanted you to see the data that suggests we are all over the board like a rainbow of colors in uncharted territory right now. So it's just good to get together and say, we do this, this works, this doesn't. So before we get into anything else, how are you planning, how are you delivering, and how are you assessing in a virtual classroom?
Well, I guess I'll say when we first had the idea with the e-learning days, just having 3 class periods within the 2-week window, I do a lot with Edulastic. So that's where I will do, like, their tests are on Edulastic, exit tickets, things like that. So what I had done was standards I knew that were going to be covered on iLearn, or that they were last year, at least the critical ones. I pulled review questions for those. So each of the 3 days, it was more of like more number sense questions, geometry questions, things like that. But there happens to be one standard I did not get taught before we left. So I've been playing around with how I need to, because I need to obviously cover that with them. And it's not a hard skill, but in past years I've done, I would introduce a lesson with like a YouTube video or something before we did notes. And I would use Edpuzzle to do that the night before. So like kids could access it the night before, and I could give like a little question to see how they felt about it before I taught it the next day. So I was thinking about doing something more along those lines to teach those skills, and then let them answer questions within the video of me teaching. And then I would probably still use Edulastic, because they're familiar with it, to assess what they were doing. I also do a lot with IXL. We have IXL this year, and I require all of them to get to at least an 80 SMART score. So I utilize that, but probably more of the Edulastic type questions. I like their rigor of questions a little bit more.
So you've kind of dabbled in a flipped classroom model with Edulastic and Edpuzzle to get them a little bit more familiar with their own learning before they come in and break down misconceptions in your classroom.
Right.
How do you think students perceive it when you present Edpuzzle and Canvas to them? I assume you prompt questions in there as well.
Yeah, so I'll stop the video in Edpuzzle and ask a question. So a lot of the times when I would do it with like a YouTube video instead of myself, when they would prompt a question, I would pause it and ask them to solve it to see what they thought, and then ask them kind of what they remember, key ideas from the video at the very end. So key points, I would stop it and ask them a couple questions.
Anybody else want to piggyback on something different or something similar?
Well, for us, it's harder because they don't have a lot of knowledge with technology until they get to us, because of the technology is just not available in the lower grades. They have, I think our third grade classroom has like 5 iPads, and they share that between the 2 classes. So for us, we try to introduce some of it to them during the year, but a big thing for us is just Canvas, because that's how they do e-learning, like if we're just a regular day off for like a snow day. So what my partner and I have done is we will record ourselves teaching, like keep it pretty basic for them, just so that it's nothing extra that they have to try to go and figure out themselves, because they're not really having the background knowledge of it. So for us, we've already done pre-recorded lessons of ourselves, because we still have a lot of math that needs to be taught before I learn. We were actually teaching up until the day before I learned. So for us, there's still quite a few standards that have not been taught. So her and I together have tackled recording ourselves in our homes, teaching the lessons like we would do in the classroom, and then giving them an exit ticket type thing with 3 questions to kind of check their understanding for it. And I'm kind of just talking about math right now, because our reading standards have pretty much been covered. We were just going to be reviewing them, but math was the big one that we have not gotten covered all the way. So for us, it's kind of
sorry, Tori, go ahead, keep going.
No, it's kind of harder for us to do like Edpuzzle and stuff, which we've played around with it. Her and I have played around with a lot of different things over the past 2 weeks, just seeing if the kids are able to stick with it and figure it out without us. Even though like we post videos of ourselves teaching them how to do it and all of that, a lot of our kids don't have that support at home to help them as well. So it would be harder for us to tackle something new with them.
My question for Chad is, first off, give us a little context for learning for your classroom. Do you have any pull-out students or versus inclusion settings that you work in, and how does that work for you as a special educator in this online platform?
Yeah, so Our school setup has changed a little bit. We lost a special education teacher the year before, so we went for one for each grade level, and then we would loop. So now I've been doing 2 grades for the last 2 years. We just kind of balance it based off of case level. Our 3rd grade students are typically, this is like not the most correct way to do this, but this is the way we've been doing it this year to kind of make it work. Our 3rd grade students are pretty much exclusively, we call it academic assistants, which is like an old resource model. We pulled them out for ELA or for math, depending on their service needs. And then our 4th grade students can be anywhere on the gamut. They can be inclusion for one, can be academic for both, or inclusion for both, or all 4 for both, depending on what their needs are. We also have a lab setting, but that I don't fill that role. That's a different educator. Our kids are a little bit ahead as far as the technology piece because we are 1-to-1 once they get to 3rd grade. And so they have a year under their belt for most of them, but we're not nearly as far ahead with our pacing guide as you guys are. It sounds like most of you all are pretty far ahead. We were teaching up until the test to get what we had determined essential standards in for a lot of our kiddos. And then my job within the individual lessons is just to make sure we're providing that specially designed instruction for those kids and that we're meeting the accommodation needs. And then a lot of it for me has been more individually checking in with kids and with parents to see what they need on a more 1-to-1 basis versus overall planning to push out new content. I'm not sure how that's going to change moving forward, but I think it will.
And shifting to Katie, as you come down here at the end of the year, as an administrator, what are you looking for as you're evaluating your teachers in these 3 components, in their planning and their delivering and their assessing?
Sure. So I specifically asked our teachers to avoid maybe the model of cumulative assessment during all of this. Right or wrong, I mean, we could both ways. But we really want, my objective as my vision for this time for the building is just that we are moving forward with as much instruction as possible, but supporting students through a stressful time. And so I want to ask a question about your one data point. When you say that the online delivery is as good as, or how do you phrase that? Something about as good as or worse than what they're learning in the classroom? What was your question?
Talking to me on my
yeah,
question.
yours. Yeah. How do you phrase that?
Do you feel like it was better than the quality of product, better than, similar to, or less than face-to-face instruction?
Sure. That was something that ran through. It's pushing us to think about things in a different way. And for me to answer that question, I would have trouble quantifying, like evaluating teachers, if this is, better than or worse than their typical instruction. It's so different from their typical instruction. I think most educators right now would say that they're getting a lower quality of work, but the question is, is our delivery meeting the needs? And if we're not meeting their needs, then is that the reason why we're getting a lower quality of work? So my mind just went to that. Like,
right away.
I think
Same thing for me.
Go ahead. What?
I said I'm right with you in the same mental process for teacher evaluation.
Yeah. I'm not sure which comes first. Kind of. Are we getting poor quality because we didn't set them up for success?
Okay. Let's move on to these, and I can jam the next 2 questions together for sake of time. And that is, what are your biggest victories so far from online instruction from the first couple weeks? And what was your biggest, we'll say shortcoming or epic fail? We'll just go with epic fail. What has been your biggest fail and what has been your biggest success so far?
I haven't had one yet. I haven't taught with this yet. So I don't have a victory or an epic fail yet. I'm sure I will, just I haven't yet.
Please drop those into the Facebook page when you do. We all need those laughs.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Epic time.
Go ahead, Jeff.
I'm sorry, Tommy. I said with epic timing of my wedding, I had taken off the Friday before my wedding and the Monday after, and that's right when all of this went down for our district. So I've been just epic fail after epic fail catching up on planning and what they're actually doing. A big success is just my rapport with my kids and their families since I've been working with a lot of them for a while. Me not knowing what to do has not been as big of a hindrance because we communicate so well and trying to catch up and kind of translate what expectations are and how to meet those on an individualized basis. So that's been nice.
Nobody else has taught yet. I guess Tori, you guys have.
We haven't really started yet, but I feel like for Westview teachers at least, we have like a group collaboration page, and we almost feel like, kind of what Katie was saying, we almost feel like we've set the kids up for failure in all of this because we weren't sure that what was going to take place. We thought we had another week with the kids to kind of prep them for everything, and then it all went down within 2.5 hours of them leaving us. So as teachers, we've kind of set them up for failure because we don't know what's going to happen yet. And we've had a lot of, I know for myself at least, the parents are asking a bunch of questions and I don't really have answers for them right now because our district hasn't decided what they're going to do. So I feel like on that part, it kind of makes you feel not so much as a failure, but you kind of feel like you've let the kids down and you're letting the parents down. For successes right now, I really don't feel like we've had any because we've not started. Just besides, I feel like we as teachers at Westview have done a really nice job of keeping in contact with the kids, whether it be through Class Dojo or we've started to try to set up Zoom meetings with them, even though a lot of the kids aren't going to be able to join, but at least try to put that contact out there with the kids.
Well, that was an easy question to answer. I'm going to go to a different beach. There we go. Ah, that's nice. Okay, moving on. So the next question now we can get a little philosophical about, and there's so much that's going to be unpacked from what we've experienced so far and moving forward as, you know, some of the panel here is now going to be diving into this experience. So just theoretically, how do we think that this experience with our students, our fellow colleagues, our administrative partners, our other stakeholders, and families and communities will change? And just pick any of these pieces that pop out. How do you think this is going to change student engagement? How do you think this is going to change future planning in 2020, 21 and beyond? How more open will we be to using open educational resources versus things like McGraw-Hill and Pearson canned curriculum for everything that we do, since we discovered that there are positives to how we integrate these type of things? And how does this shift, this will be for Katie to start with, how does this shift our professional development focus moving forward? So pick any or all of these, just take any of them and you can dive in and we'll go from there.
I can talk first about professional development. I would have put on your survey, we do this at least quarterly, almost monthly. We're talking about one-to-one and technology in our professional development sessions. And so the vision of the corporation is definitely moving this way. But I think that maybe there was definitely a perception of, you know, I don't need these for my classroom. Math doesn't work that way. I mean, I'm just making up stuff. And so the interesting part is this forces that innovation. It forces people. We've offered a lot of professional development. I would say, generally speaking, my teachers would report that there's been a lot of support to move into this space. But people who were reluctant, now they have to recognize that there's no other way. And so I really think that it will bring us back to a space that when we can start professional development in the future, we can reflect on these experiences. And I'm not suggesting that I think that our classroom needs to be this model all the time, of course. But I think that it'll force people to kind of reflect on how can we just enhance our day-to-day operations based on this experience. I think it's going to be, not that I want to say this is good, because it's nothing is good about this, but I think that it demonstrates the need. So
After being in leading professional development in Katie's building, I already have my picture of who is not going to listen at those meetings already, and who was going to jump up and down and say, we need to do this. And I think there definitely will be unity saying, I was just struggling like a fish out of water, and I need to focus on doing a better job. So I can see it right now for you.
experienced it. Yeah, you experienced it. Yeah.
Anybody else want to take one?
I don't know how I mean, it kind of goes with a couple different things, but kind of like what Katie said, we do a lot with online stuff currently. So when kids come into my room, for example, they know to get on Canvas, there's an agenda, like they've practiced these things. So for math, like this wasn't like, oh my gosh, I need to find all these new resources to use. It's things that we use all the time. They're just going to be using them more. But there are some teachers who are very much stuck in, hey, I've done this for, 10 years the same way. And yes, I'm listening to your ideas about this technology, but now they're the ones reaching out, like, what should I do? Like, I'm not there. I can't do it this way. I can't do stations the way that I've done them. So I think it'll be very interesting to see how people shift those thoughts to find different ways to engage their students, and to where it's not just the same thing every day. Because I think a lot of the times it's the same routine week after week in different classrooms. And I mean, I was like that too. I'm finally at the point where I feel like I can try different things, but I'm also 6 years into it. So I try to like spice it up for the kids with engagement and finding different online games or different things. But I feel like as a whole, like staff, that's kind of what I've noticed is it's going to be learning how to incorporate different things, not necessarily what I've always done. That could still be great, but how can I make it better that's going to meet the needs of the kids? Because I mean, they're honestly online more than what we think they are. So trying to, get into their interest and find things, I find that's what I'm noticing, with all the things coming out. And I've been helping my nephews with their online learning, and they're in second and preschool. And I'm looking at some of the stuff they're doing, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's super cool. But just, learning those different ideas, I think it's an important time, more than I'm seeing. It's like, yes, it's a terrible time, but I think we're also going to realize how many different resources and how many different things we can utilize that we haven't used or haven't even thought about. At least that's what I'm noticing through this whole thing, and just collaboration amongst not just my building, but like across the country.
I know for our building, we're kind of split half and half. Like half of us are completely engaged in technology. We're wanting to learn new things about technology. I'm always looking for new resources to integrate into my classroom that use technology, because iLearn is on the computer. There's so many things that they have to do on the computer, so I'm always looking for new ways. I think it's really going to be interesting if we go to e-learning, because right now in our building, each grade level has one person who does all the e-learning for their grade. So like I do all of the 4th grade e-learning, and then my partner, I just send it to the Canvas Commons and she just takes it. So it's going to be really interesting to see how some of the teachers rise to the challenge, I guess. I know for us, at least, what works in my classroom doesn't always work in my partner's classroom, because her class might not be used to the type of technology that I use. So I think it's going to be interesting just to see how our building comes together as a whole and decides what to do with the technology. Because right now, all of our like professional development, I know in Richmond we have professional development every Tuesday after school. So right now it's all been about like Fontes and Pinnell curriculum over like the past 2 years, because I did my student teaching there last year. So we've had nothing like really with technology. So it's going to be really interesting to see just what everybody ends up doing.
As far as us, I think we're going to see a big change in the future, not just with student engagement, but with all stakeholders within the community. Our district's kind of in a tumultuous time with some board issues. And unfortunately, one of the board members called the Chromebooks toy computers because he's really like hands-on with what's going on. So that was great. And the parents think it's like supplementing, or not supplementing, but taking over what we do in the classroom. And it's just like, go onto this and do this website for the next hour and a half. And then you're going to so-and-so. Like, I don't think they really understand the gravity of how we implement that tool and utilize it to benefit instruction. So I think this whole process has really kind of gained or strengthened rather the partnership between this community and the schools individually. So that's been exciting to see and to see where that goes in the future.
I do think that the parents and like the families, they've surprised me through all of this. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing to say, but they have kind of stepped up and they've asked a lot of questions and they're collaborating with me. And that's not something that we've had all year. Collaboration with families is something that our building lacks, and that we always are trying new things to get them to be more involved. But this has really gotten them involved and fully immersed in like what we're doing. They're asking questions. They're wanting to know what they can do to help us. So that was really positive to see.
So I popped this infographic up here. There's a lot over the past couple years, a lot of new models to increase the depth of learning in virtual environments. We are, even back in the fall, before anything happened, have been looking at how to integrate this into teaching our pre-service teachers lesson design. A lot of people don't like SAMR because it's hard to quantify, and there are some other methods out there that Bloomington and University of Michigan and some other places use around that we're taking into consideration. But I just wanted to show this model, especially to Katie and Tori, who've gone that I've had in classes, and to look at how Bloom's integration works in higher level processing. And the SAMR model is supposed to do that with tech integration. And I was just thinking about this as Tori was talking, because you have this gap where, and we have this within higher ed, we have this within our school of education. There's at some point a generational gap, but at other points a technology gap. And that is, what is tech integration? What do we teach? Because we have a learning management system, parents just assume that if I put a worksheet on Canvas, that's tech integration. And we would say, no, that's the lowest level of substitution, because I could make a copy, as Tori said, and give them a packet and do the same thing. At the the highest level may be augmentation, because it helps me grade it more efficiently. But we're looking to get all the way up to the highest level of Bloom's, where there's evaluation and synthesis, integration in the creation of new tasks, and previously inconceivable ideas in online learning. As Dr. Himlo Silver and Dr. Bonk, my professors in the past 2 semesters, and Dr. G at IU would say, what we're trying to do here is make the invisible visible. And how can we do that with our students? And how can we teach our teachers to do that? So I thought that was a relevant thing to pop up there, just because of what Tori said, that you're split between people who think this is what it should be and people who think this is what it should be. And those people sitting in Katie's professional development meetings every quarter going, I'll listen, but I don't need to know this. So that's kind of why I thought this roundtable would be great to brainstorm. So I'm going to shift to the last discussion here, and I want you guys just to take anything that you have in comparison. It would be interesting to see this done again in June, just to see how this all played out in May at the end. But if you have any open discussion about how you plan to do any of these, how do you plan to include parents more effectively over the next month? How do you plan to praise students and take their complaints? How are you going to stay connected? and how are you going to innovate in other items that you might have? So I'm just going to open this up for one more kind of roundtable that you would answer these or anything else that you have here at the end.
We're asking, we're using this for not only attendance, but also just student accountability all the way around. Every week, we're asking all of our teachers to contact all of their students in some fashion. So what that means is if they're having an email exchange with a student or the student turns in their work, then that is contact. But if a student is for some reason not turning in work or they're not communicating, we're asking teachers to being able to document every time that they've been in communication with a student or parent for that matter. And then the role of myself, the guidance counselor, the dean of students, we're going to jump into some of those because the reality is we're going to need to support students through that, identifying maybe what their barrier is to being engaged, whether that's the internet or that's, lack of understanding. On a just side note, sounds so simplistic, but I have never had this on my phone until now. My cell phone, there's an app that's free right now for, there's lots of programs that are free right now to help people get through this. There's an app on my phone that I could call you from my desk phone on my cell phone. So it doesn't look like it's my cell phone calling you. And that is just the coolest thing. I'm going to be able to call so many families that I just haven't ever, I know that sounds so easy, but why has that never been a thing before? That's so brilliant.
I totally get it.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this. And you can even merge multiple people into the conversation. You can do that with an iPhone too, but I can call you from my desk phone and then chat. If I'm thinking about this through a special ed lens. So I'm setting up the case conference. It looks like it's coming from the school, but then I tag you in off your cell phone. They don't see your cell phone. They only see the call from my office.
I always have to be like, I have a funky area code from Ohio. I'm not a telemarketer. Please answer it. Pretty please. We have a meeting. You promised.
Anybody else? Any last thoughts?
I'm just continuing to do the Zoom with the kids to check in. Some days there's more than others. So I think that's one of the ways I'm trying to stay connected to them. And I plan to send out, once we start the e-learning stuff, little postcards to them, to the ones who I haven't seen on Zoom because we don't have internet. And then we have Parent Square that I plan to, when I know what I'm doing, when we have this a little bit more figured out, I'll send them out by week, letting them know this is what's expected for math, different things like that. And they're very good at communicating through that. That's been a tool this year.
Well, I've been communicating with my parents. I'm on Classroom Dojo, and mostly all of my parents are connected. I sent letters home to my kids this week through the mail because a lot of them aren't on technology, so I can't communicate with them that way. Some of my kids are communicating with me through Canvas, so they're sending me messages on Canvas. But with the parents and stuff, they're doing a nice job of communicating on Class Dojo. And then our principal has asked if we, Katie said, if we've not heard from any parents or kids, even though they're not doing e-learning yet or things like that, he's asked that we would reach out and call them just to check in, make sure they're okay, and all of that.
I have a dojo for my 4-year-old at preschool now, and she does the lessons at home with mom and dad, and then sends it to dojo to the teacher. So it's interesting collaboration. And then we give her little star points or whatever on there. It's wonderful. So I get that. Well, I just wanted to say a big thank you. We're going to keep expanding. If you have colleagues or other teachers to join the Facebook group, have them join. I saw that Kate sent a few into there. Keep adding resources as you start to dive deeper into this. It's something you come across on Pinterest or a lesson design. It doesn't have to be a strategy or a tool. It could be specific to 4th grade or 6th grade or things that go. I've been trying to throw cross-curricular learning activities in there because I started as a science page, but want to keep expanding it as a curriculum page. So again, just want to say thank you. And if you have any other thoughts moving forward, please let us know. At the university, we're trying to set up ways that we can do collaborative Google pages and then send out to our K-12 stakeholders, never wanting to be big brother, but always wanting to say, hey, we have the time right now to assist that you guys don't have. And so that's kind of what we're looking for, not only for you guys, but also the other schools around campus. You know, you got chem professors going, I have no idea what I'm going to do right now, and things like that. So we are in the same boat. So we're all in this together. Thank you for being teachers, and thank you so much for joining this roundtable. And do pop back in.
Thanks, Tommy. Thanks for setting it up.
Thank you.
Thanks. Nice meeting y'all. Have a good one.
I'm going to stop the share, and then if you want to hang out, I will show you how to do the backgrounds.
Oh, I do want to see this.
So I'm just going to